The pastel balloons floated gently above the tables, their soft pinks and blues glowing under the string lights. My baby shower was everything I had imagined. Friends and family gathered, the smell of fresh flowers filling the room, laughter ringing out as gifts piled high on the table beside me. For months, I had poured my energy into making this day special. After years of trying, Michael and I were finally expecting our first child, and I wanted to celebrate every moment. I sat in the center of it all, my hands resting on the curve of my belly, a smile tugging at my lips as my mother, Margaret, hovered nearby, making sure everyone had enough to eat. My father, Thomas, was deep in conversation with Michael, their voices warm and animated. For once, everything felt perfect. Then Sophie walked in. My younger sister swept into the room like she owned it, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her hair perfectly curled, her lips painted a shade too bold for an afternoon gathering. The room seemed to shift with her arrival. She had always had that effect. Charming, magnetic, impossible to ignore. "Emily," she cried, rushing forward to hug me. The embrace was quick, tight, and just a little too staged, like she wanted the entire room to notice. "You look radiant, big sis," I smiled, trying to ignore the slight edge in her tone. Sophie and I had always had a complicated relationship. She was the star of every room, the one who thrived on attention. Growing up, I had grown used to stepping aside, letting her shine, but today was supposed to be different. Today was supposed to be mine. As the afternoon unfolded, gifts were opened, games were played, and laughter filled the air. I felt myself relax again, my earlier worries slipping away. Guests took turns hugging me, asking about the baby's name, touching the soft pastel decorations I had chosen with care. For a while, I believed the day would remain as perfect as I had hoped. But then Sophie cleared her throat. She had a glass of sparkling cider in her hand, her smile dazzling as she clinked her fork gently against it. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward her. My heart sank, an instinctive dread creeping in. "I have an announcement to make," she said, her voice ringing with excitement. I didn't want to overshadow Emily's special day, but... She paused dramatically, one hand pressing lightly to her stomach. "I just found out I'm pregnant too." The room erupted. Gasps, cheers, applause. Guests jumped from their seats to hug her, their voices rising with congratulations. In an instant, the focus shifted, the spotlight stolen. I sat frozen, my smile faltering as Sophie basked in the glow that was supposed to be mine. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The sound of applause and laughter echoed around me, but it all felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. My hands rested on my belly, the one place I had felt secure, but now even that comfort seemed invaded. Sophie beamed as guests swarmed around her, asking questions, hugging her tightly. "How far along are you? When's your due date? Oh my gosh, you two will have babies so close in age." Their excitement spilled over, louder than the music, brighter than the balloons, drowning out every effort I had made to create this day. Michael's hand touched mine gently. His jaw was tight, his smile forced. "Emily," he whispered, leaning close, "don't let her ruin this. This is still your day," but the words didn't soothe me. They only sharpened the ache, because no matter how much I told myself otherwise, I could see it. Sophie had taken the spotlight, and no one was looking at me anymore. Margaret rushed to Sophie's side, her face glowing with delight. "Oh, sweetheart, this is such wonderful news." She hugged her tightly, then pulled back, tears glistening in her eyes. 2 grandbabies in 1 year. What a blessing, Thomas added his own congratulations, his deep laugh booming across the room. "Well, looks like I'll need to build another crib in the workshop." He meant it as a joke, but the words landed like a knife. My baby had gone from miracle to afterthought in a single moment. I forced myself to stand, to plaster a smile on my face, to hug Sophie when she made her way back to me. "That's great news," I said softly, my throat tight. "Congratulations." "Thank you, Emily," Sophie replied, her voice syrupy sweet, but her eyes glittered with something else, something smug. She leaned closer, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. I guess we'll see who Mom and Dad fuss over more. I pulled back, my chest tight, my hands trembling at my sides. No one else noticed. They were too busy fussing over her, asking for details she didn't even have yet. She was barely 8 weeks along, but already she had shifted the gravity of the room. As the evening dragged on, guess who had once surrounded me now clustered around Sophie? The games slowed. The laughter felt forced, and I found myself retreating to the corner, watching as my sister basked in a glow that should have been mine. Michael joined me, his arm wrapping protectively around my shoulders. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to compete with her." But I couldn't shake the thought that had burrowed deep in my chest. Maybe Sophie hadn't just announced her pregnancy. Maybe she had declared war. The ride home from the baby shower was suffocating. Michael kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, his knuckles white around the steering wheel. He didn't need to ask what I was thinking. My silence said it all. Finally, he spoke. "Emily, you know she planned that. She couldn't stand the thought of you having the spotlight for one day." I pressed my hands against my belly, staring out the window at the blur of streetlights. "I know," I whispered. "But why does it always work? Why does she always win?" Michael shook his head. "She doesn't win, Emily. She just makes noise. You're the one carrying our child. You're the one who built a life with me. None of that changes because of a stunt at a party." His words should have comforted me, but they only deepened the ache. Because in my family, Sophie had always been the golden one. Growing up, she was the cheerleader, the prom queen, the girl everyone adored. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the shadow she left behind. And tonight proved nothing had changed, not even with something as sacred as motherhood. When we got home, I slipped off my shoes and sank onto the couch, exhaustion pressing down on me. Margaret had called twice during the ride, no doubt to gush more about Sophie's news, but I didn't have the energy to answer. Michael sat beside me, pulling me into his arms. "You need to set boundaries," he said quietly. "If you let her, she'll keep stealing every moment from you." I knew he was right, but the thought of confronting Sophie filled me with dread. She had a way of twisting everything, turning any accusation into a joke, or making me look like the jealous one. I could already hear her voice. "Oh, Emily, can't you just be happy for me?" The next morning, Margaret showed up unannounced with a basket of muffins. She fussed over me briefly, asking how I was feeling, but within minutes the conversation shifted. "Sophie's glowing," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "She's so thrilled. I just know the two of you will go through this journey together." Side by side, I forced a smile, but inside I felt like I was disappearing. My baby shower had been erased, rewritten as the day Sophie stole the stage, and now even my mother was helping her hold it. After Margaret left, Michael found me standing at the window, my eyes burning. "This was supposed to be my time," I said softly. "For once in my life, it was supposed to be about me." He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Then we'll make it about you," he whispered. "Not by competing with Sophie, but by protecting what's ours." And in that moment, I made a vow. If Sophie wanted a war, she was about to find out I wasn't the shadow she remembered. I was stronger now. The following week was filled with phone calls, texts, and social media posts, all about Sophie. Photos of her holding a tiny pair of baby shoes, captions about the journey ahead, even hashtags announcing her big news. My baby shower, which had been carefully planned for months, was reduced to a side note in people's comments. So happy for the Hayes sisters. Double blessings. It stung every time I saw it. Not because I wasn't happy for her, but because it was so obvious what she had done. She hadn't just announced her pregnancy. She had timed it, orchestrated it, to make sure my moment would never truly be mine. Michael noticed the way I avoided my phone, the way my smile grew thin whenever another notification buzzed. One evening, as we sat on the couch, he gently took my phone and set it aside. Emily, he said softly, stop letting her live rent-free in your head. She thrives on this kind of attention. Don't give her more of it. I nodded, though my chest still ached. But it's not just about me anymore, I murmured, resting a hand on my belly. Our baby deserves to be celebrated too. He kissed my forehead. And they will be. Not because of likes or posts, but because they'll have parents who put them first. A few days later, Margaret invited us to Sunday dinner. I hesitated, but Michael encouraged me to go. If we don't show up, it looks like Sophie has won again, he reasoned. When we arrived, Sophie was already there, glowing in a flowy dress that barely showed a bump but somehow screamed, "Look at me." She greeted us with exaggerated warmth. "Emily, how's my fellow mama-to-be?" I forced a smile, my teeth gritted behind it. "Fine, Sophie. How about you?" "Oh, just wonderful," she gushed, launching into a long story about her cravings, her morning sickness, her plans for a gender reveal party. Margaret and Thomas listened intently, their faces lit with excitement. I might as well have been invisible at the table. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "Actually," he said firmly, "Emily's been doing incredible. She's already set up the nursery, and the doctor says everything looks perfect." His hand found mine, squeezing reassuringly. For the first time all evening, the spotlight shifted back to me. I caught Sophie's eyes narrowing ever so slightly before she plastered on another smile. "That's great, sis. But I was thinking maybe we should do a joint baby shower for me too. Wouldn't that be fun? Everyone celebrating us together." My heart sank, and Margaret clapped her hands in delight. "What a lovely idea," she exclaimed. I sat frozen, my stomach knotting. This wasn't just a rivalry anymore. It was Sophie's way of rewriting my story as hers. The words joint baby shower echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I had just finished planning my own celebration, every detail chosen with care, and now Sophie wanted to stitch herself into the spotlight again. Michael's hand tightened on mine under the table. He must have sensed the tension building in me. "I don't think that's a good idea," he said calmly. "Emily already had her baby shower. It was a special day just for her," Sophie pouted, her lips curling into a practiced expression of wounded innocence. "I'm not trying to take anything away from her. I just thought it would be fun to share." Two sisters, both pregnant. It's sweet, isn't it? Margaret jumped in before I could speak. "It is sweet. Think of the photos, the memories. Everyone would love it." I swallowed hard, my voice catching in my throat. "Mom, I already had my baby shower. That day was supposed to be about celebrating my baby. Sophie had her announcement then. It's only fair she has her own day too." Thomas cleared his throat, trying to mediate. "Emily's right. Each of you deserves your own moment. Let's not make this a competition," but Sophie wasn't finished. She leaned across the table, her eyes fixed on me, her smile sharp despite its sweetness. "You sound defensive, Emily. Are you worried people won't show up for mine unless we do it together?" The remark landed like a slap. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, my stomach tightening with anger. Before I could respond, Michael spoke firmly. "That's enough, Sophie. You know exactly what you're doing." The air grew tense. Margaret looked between us, her expression torn, while Thomas set down his fork with a heavy sigh. Sophie leaned back in her chair, smugness flickering in her eyes, as if she had successfully planted the seed of doubt. After dinner, as Michael and I walked to the car, my hands shook. "She's trying to erase me," I whispered. He opened the door for me, his voice steady. "No, she's trying to pull you into her game, but you're stronger than that." When we got home, I sat on the edge of our bed, running my fingers over the soft blanket I'd folded for the nursery. My baby deserved joy, not tension. But Sophie's shadow seemed to loom larger every day. I made a decision then, quiet but unshakable. If Sophie wanted to fight for the spotlight, she could. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. This time, I wouldn't step aside. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, nursery shopping, and long nights spent imagining the little life growing inside me. Yet even in those moments of joy, Sophie found ways to intrude. She called Margaret daily with updates, her cravings, her mood swings, her endless questions about pregnancy. Margaret, in turn, relayed every detail back to me, as if I needed a running commentary of Sophie's journey. "She's glowing, Emily. You should see her. She already has names picked out. Isn't that exciting?" Each word felt like a tiny needle, pricking at the joy I tried to hold on to. I would nod politely, forcing a smile, but inside I was exhausted. I wanted to talk about my baby, my excitement, my fears. Instead, I was stuck listening to Sophie's spotlight growing brighter. Michael noticed. One evening, after I hung up the phone, he took my hands in his. "Emily, you don't have to let her invade your space like this. Tell your mom you need boundaries. This isn't healthy," I sighed, leaning against him. "If I push back, Mom will say I'm being selfish." Sophie has always been her favorite. He kissed the top of my head. "Then let me handle it." The chance came sooner than I expected. At our next family dinner, Sophie launched into another dramatic retelling of her latest ultrasound, waving the picture like a trophy. Margaret hung on every word, her eyes shining, while Thomas chuckled warmly. Michael cleared his throat. "That's great, Sophie. But can we also talk about Emily's checkup?" Everything looked perfect. Our little one is growing so fast the room grew quiet for a moment, all eyes shifting to me. I wasn't used to that kind of attention, not when Sophie was present. My cheeks warmed as I described hearing the baby's heartbeat again, steady and strong. For a brief moment, I saw Margaret's expression soften, pride flickering in her eyes. But Sophie couldn't leave it there. She leaned forward, her smile sharp. "That's wonderful, Emily. But they say second pregnancies can be more challenging. I'll probably need more support than you." The words were casual, but the intent was clear. Shift the focus back to her. Margaret immediately began fussing over Sophie again, offering advice, asking questions, drowning out my small victory. Later, as we drove home, I pressed a hand to my belly, fighting back tears. "I don't know how much more of this I can take." Michael reached for my hand, his voice steady. "You don't have to take it anymore. We're going to set boundaries, with your mom, with Sophie, with everyone. This is our journey, Emily. No one gets to take that away from us." His words settled in my heart like an anchor. For the first time, I began to believe I could protect not just my baby, but myself too. It was Michael's idea to host a small gathering at our home. A cozy dinner with just close friends and a few family members. "No games, no announcements, no spotlight stealing," he said with a smile as he set the table. "Just love and support for you and the baby." At first, I hesitated. The thought of inviting Sophie filled me with dread, but Michael insisted. "If she tries anything here, people will see it for what it is. She won't be able to hide behind her charm." So we invited her, along with Margaret and Thomas. The evening started beautifully. The smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Candles flickered warmly, and laughter bubbled as our friends asked me about nursery colors and baby names. For once, the attention felt genuine, not forced. Sophie arrived late, of course, sweeping in with a dramatic sigh. "Sorry I'm behind," she said, sliding into her chair. "Morning sickness. You wouldn't believe how bad it's been for me." I bit back a comment, choosing instead to focus on the guests who were eager to hear about my plans for the baby's arrival. For a while, it worked. The conversation stayed on me, on Michael, on the little life we were building. But Sophie couldn't resist. As dessert was served, she pulled out her phone with a flourish. "Everyone, I have to show you something." She held up the screen, displaying an elaborate Pinterest board of baby shower ideas. "I've been planning mine. Isn't it fabulous?" The guest leaned in politely, offering compliments. Margaret beamed, her hands clasped together. "Oh, Sophie, this looks wonderful." "We'll make it perfect for you," my chest tightened. Even here, in my home, Sophie found a way to redirect the light. Michael's voice cut through the chatter. "Actually, everyone, can I say something?" I stood, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. The room quieted. Emily has been incredible throughout this pregnancy. She's handled everything with so much grace, even when it hasn't been easy. Tonight, I just want to raise a glass to her, to my wife, to the mother of our child, and to the strength she shows every single day. The room erupted with applause, glasses clinking. My cheeks burned, but this time it was from pride, not shame. For once, I felt seen. Across the table, Sophie's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing just slightly before she forced her expression back into one of polite approval. But I had noticed, and so had others. For the first time, the shift in energy was obvious. After everyone left, I turned to Michael, tears brimming in my eyes. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said simply, kissing my forehead. "Because no matter how hard she tries, Sophie will never take this away from you." In the days following our dinner, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. For once, Sophie hadn't walked away the star of the show. Michael's toast had reminded everyone, including me, of what really mattered. This journey, this baby, this love we shared. But Sophie wasn't one to let a moment slip without reclaiming it. Within a week, she announced on social media that she and her husband were planning the biggest gender reveal the town had ever seen. The post was filled with glittering graphics, hashtags, and a countdown timer. Almost instantly, the comments flooded in with excitement, and my phone buzzed nonstop as friends and relatives tagged me, assuming I'd be thrilled to join in. Margaret called that evening, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Emily, isn't it wonderful? 2 babies on the way, 2 celebrations. This family has so much to be grateful for." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. "Mom, it feels like every time I have a moment, Sophie takes it. First my baby shower, now this." Her tone softened, but only slightly. "Oh, Emily, don't be dramatic. She's just excited. You should be happy for her." The familiar sting pressed at my chest. It was the same pattern as always. Sophie could do no wrong, and if I objected, I was labeled jealous or bitter. When I hung up, Michael found me curled on the couch, tears brimming in my eyes. "She's stealing everything," I whispered, "even the joy of being pregnant." Michael knelt in front of me, his hands firm around mine. "No, Emily. She's stealing attention, not joy. Joy is what you feel when you hear the babies. Heartbeat when you feel those kicks. When you imagine holding our child for the first time." She can't touch that. His words sank deep, steadying me. And yet I knew Sophie wasn't finished. She thrived on drama, on competition, on making me feel small. The gender reveal was set for the following month, and Margaret insisted we attend. "It will be fun," she said brightly, "a chance for the whole family to celebrate." I wanted to refuse, to draw the line, but Thomas called too, his voice kind but insistent. "It would mean a lot if you came, Emily. Sophie's your sister. This is a time for unity, not division." So we agreed to go. The day of the event, Sophie had spared no expense. A rented venue, towering balloon arches, even a professional photographer capturing every moment. Guests buzzed with anticipation, sipping sparkling drinks, speculating on whether the confetti would be pink or blue. I stood beside Michael, my hands folded over my belly, trying to disappear into the crowd. But when Sophie stepped onto the stage, her radiant smile plastered across the giant screen behind her. I knew this wasn't about the baby at all. This was about her. The countdown began, projected on a massive screen as the crowd gathered around Sophie and her husband. 10, 9, 8. The numbers flashed brightly, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. When the confetti cannons exploded, showering the room in a cloud of pink, the crowd erupted in cheers. Sophie clutched her stomach dramatically, tears streaking her cheeks as photographers swarmed her. Margaret was sobbing with joy, hugging anyone within reach, while Thomas clapped so hard his hands turned red. Beside me, Michael squeezed my hand. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, but the lump in my throat was almost too big to swallow. Watching Sophie soak in the adoration, I felt myself shrink again, pushed into the shadows. People congratulated her like she had just achieved something monumental, as if no one else in the room was also carrying a child. A few well-meaning guests drifted my way. "Isn't it wonderful you and Sophie get to go through this together?" one said, patting my arm. "Your babies will be best friends." I smiled politely, but inside, I wanted to scream. It wasn't about the babies for Sophie, it never was. It was about winning. After the event, Margaret gathered us together for a family photo. Sophie stood front and center, glowing, while I was nudged to the side, half hidden in the frame. Michael noticed, pulling me closer to him, his arm protective around my waist. Still, the imbalance was glaring. Later that night, back at home, I finally broke. Tears streamed down my face as I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands wrapped around my belly. "Michael, what if our baby grows up always second best? What if they never feel celebrated the way Sophie's will?" Michael knelt in front of me, his eyes fierce. "Emily, listen to me. Our child will never be second best. Not to us. Not in this home. They will know every single day how loved and cherished they are. Sophie can throw all the parties she wants, but love isn't measured in confetti and balloons." His conviction steadied me, but the ache lingered. Because deep down, I knew Sophie wasn't done. She thrived on one-upping me. And with each passing day, her shadow grew longer. Still, as I lay in bed that night, Michael's words echoed in my mind. Maybe Sophie could control the narrative in front of others. Maybe she could win the applause, the photos, the hashtags. But she would never control the love in our home. And in the end, maybe that was the real victory. The weeks after Sophie's gender reveal were some of the hardest of my pregnancy. Every family conversation circled back to her. Margaret sent me photos of nursery decorations Sophie had chosen, articles about the best prenatal vitamins Sophie was trying, even updates about her morning sickness, as if I needed to know. I smiled, nodded, pretended it didn't hurt, but inside, I was breaking. This was supposed to be my season of joy, yet Sophie's shadow lingered over every milestone. One evening, as Michael and I folded baby clothes in the nursery, I finally let the words spill out. "I'm scared, Michael, not of labor, not of being a mom. I'm scared that my child will always come second to Sophie's." Michael set down the tiny onesie in his hands and turned to me, his expression steady and certain. "Emily, look around you. Look at this room. Look at the love in every detail you've put into it. This isn't about Sophie. This is about us, about our baby. That child will grow up knowing they are the center of our world. That's more than Sophie can ever steal." His words wrapped around me like armor. For the first time in months, I realized he was right. Sophie could fight for attention all she wanted, but the love between us, the love we were ready to pour into our child, was untouchable. When my labor finally began, Margaret and Thomas rushed to the hospital, buzzing with nervous excitement. Sophie arrived too, of course, complaining dramatically about the traffic. But for once, I didn't care. The moment I held my baby girl in my arms, the world outside faded. Her tiny cries filled the room, her warmth pressed against my chest, and nothing else mattered. Margaret cried openly, kissing my forehead. Thomas beamed, his hands trembling as he held his granddaughter. Even Sophie was quieter than usual, staring at the baby with something unreadable in her eyes. But it was Michael's voice that anchored me. He leaned close, whispering, "Emily, you did it. She's perfect, and she's ours." Lying there, exhausted but overflowing with love, I finally understood. Sophie had never truly stolen my spotlight. She had borrowed it, demanded it, faked it, but the real light was here, in my arms, the kind of light that couldn't be dimmed by applause or stolen by a dramatic announcement. As my daughter's tiny fingers curled around mine, I made a silent promise. She would never feel second best. She would grow up knowing her worth, her beauty, her place in this world. not because others clapped the loudest, but because her parents loved her fiercely. Sophie might always chase attention, but I didn't need it anymore. My daughter was the only spotlight I would ever need.